She lied to the FBI for a bleeding stranger, and by sunrise, 50 black SUVs surrounded her diner. Clara Evans thought she was saving one exhausted man with blood on his cuff. She had no idea he was Matteo Rossi, the most feared mafia boss in Illinois. One sentence at 2:17 a.m. turned a broke waitress into the most dangerous woman in Mill Creek. The FBI wanted her. The Morettas hunted her. And Matteo did something that shocked everyone. He publicly claimed her as his own. Clara Evans told one lie at 2:17 in the morning, and by sunrise, her name was on every phone in Mill Creek. Before that night, nobody noticed her. Not really. She was just the woman behind the counter at Clara S. Diner, the small roadside place on Highway 41, where truckers stopped for coffee. Nurses came after 12-hour shifts, and lonely people sat in corner booths because home felt too quiet. The sign outside said Clara S. Diner, open all night, but the place had belonged to her mother long before it belonged to anyone else. Linda Evans had painted the first sign herself 20 years earlier, standing on a ladder in old jeans, laughing while Clara held the paint can below. Back then, the diner smelled like pancakes, coffee, and hope. Now it smelled like fryer oil, bleach, and bills that never stopped coming. Clara was 27, too young to feel finished, too tired to believe she was not. Her mother had died 4 months ago, after a long illness that took her body first. Then her savings, then Clara S. sleep. The hospital called the remaining balance outstanding. Clara called it $47,000 of grief with interest. Every month, a new envelope arrived. Every month. Clara opened it, stared at the number, and folded it into the drawer beneath the register. She worked nights because nights paid a little extra. She worked doubles when Pete asked. Pete was not really the owner anymore. The bank was closer to being the owner now. Pete was the old manager who had stayed because Linda had once helped him when his wife died. That was the kind of person Linda had been. She fed people who could not pay. She remembered names. She said respect was not something you gave people after they proved worthy of it. Respect was where you started. Clara tried to live by that. Some nights, it felt noble. Most nights, it felt expensive. The rain that night was light, not a storm, just a cold, thin rain that made the parking lot shine under the neon sign. The clock over the register clicked softly. 2:17 a.m. Clara was wiping the counter for the third time. Not because it was dirty, but because her hands needed something to do. The road outside was empty except for an 18-wheeler parked near the gas station across the highway. The radio in the kitchen played low, some old country song about leaving and never coming back. Then the bell over the door rang. Clara looked up. A man stepped inside. He wore a dark suit, tailored and expensive. The kind of suit nobody wore in Mill Creek unless they were lost, powerful, or both. His black hair was slicked back. His shoes were wet from the rain. He carried himself straight, but not easily, like he had taught his body to hide pain. His face was handsome in a dangerous way, not soft, not friendly, but exhausted. His eyes moved first to the window, then to the kitchen door, then to Clara, measuring everything, trusting nothing. Clara had seen men like that before, though never in suits worth more than her car. Men who sat with their backs to walls, men who listened for footsteps, men who had learned that a room couldn't against them without warning. "We reopen," she said, because it was the only normal sentence she had. The man came to the counter and sat. "Coffee," he said. Black, his voice was low, controlled, but his right hand trembled when he reached for his wallet. That was when Clara saw the blood. It stained the edge of his white cuff, dark red, fresh. Not a scrape from a kitchen knife, not a drop from shaving. Real blood, enough to make most people step back. Clara did not. She should have. She knew that later. She knew that any safe, sensible woman alone at 2 a.m. would have reached under the counter for the phone. But Clara had watched blood leave her mother slowly for months. She had watched nurses change sheets, and doctors speak gently while doing nothing that cost too much. She had learned that danger did not always look wild. Sometimes danger was quiet. Sometimes danger had paperwork. Sometimes danger told you, with a kind smile, that there were no more options. So Clara poured the coffee. "Rough night?" she asked. The man looked at her then, really looked. For 1 second, the coldness left his face. What remained was grief. Raw and badly hidden. You could say that. Clara set the cup down. "Cream, no. Sugar, no." "Then you and every tired trucker in Illinois have something in common." A small smile touched his mouth. It did not last. He wrapped both hands around the mug, as if it was the only warm thing left in the world. Clara leaned against the counter, watching him without trying to look like she was watching. His left sleeve was clean. His right cuff was not. His jaw was tight. His breathing was steady in a way that felt deliberate. "You hurt?" she asked. "No, that was quick." He looked at the coffee. "Not badly." Different answer. "Still no." She almost smiled. Then headlights swept across the windows. Not one pair. 3 black SUVs turned into the lot, fast and silent, blocking the exits. Their lights cut through the rain. The man did not turn. He went still. His eyes met Clara S. "Back door," he whispered. Clara S. pulse jumped. She should have said no. She should have stepped back. Instead, she nodded toward the kitchen. "Through there." Past the freezer, he stood. The bell over the front door rang before he reached the swinging kitchen door. 4 people entered. Federal jackets, dark clothes, hands near their weapons. The lead agent was Asian American, early 40s, neat suit under the FBI vest, eyes sharp enough to cut through a lie before it was spoken. His badge flashed as he stepped toward the counter. "FBI, we were looking for a man. Dark suit, 6'2". Came through here in the last 10 minutes. The kitchen door was still moving behind Clara. One slow swing, then another. The coffee cup sat steaming in front of an empty stool. Clara felt her heartbeat in her throat. "Miss," the agent said. "Your name?" "Clara." "Clara what?" "Evans." He glanced at her name tag anyway. "Where is he?" "Miss Evans." In that moment, the whole world narrowed to one sentence. Clara could tell the truth. The FBI would move through the kitchen. They would drag the man out. She would go back to wiping counters. She would keep her job. Maybe Park would forget her. Maybe the diner would be normal by sunrise. But then she remembered her mother's hospital room. The pale walls. The clipped voice of the insurance investigator. The way he said, "We understand this is difficult," while explaining that the treatment Lyndon needed was not covered. He had not been cruel. That was the worst part. He had just been doing his job. Clara looked at Agent Park. Another man doing his job. Another man with power asking her to hand over someone who looked hunted, tired and human. "No one has been here," Clara said. Her voice was clear. Too clear. Park did not blink. "No one, just me." One agent moved toward the bathrooms. Another went through the kitchen. Clara kept her hands on the counter so they would not shake. Park watched her face. He did not look angry. That scared her more. He looked interested, like she had become a locked door. The agent returned from the kitchen. Clear. Park did not move. "You live at 247 Oak Street, apartment 2B, he said. Clara felt the blood leave her face. "Your mother, Linda Evans, died 4 months ago at Mercy General. You owe $47,216. You work nights here. You have no criminal record, no savings, no lawyer." He leaned closer. His voice dropped. "Smart women do not ruin their lives for strangers." Clara swallowed. "Then I guess it's lucky no stranger came in." Something moved behind Park's eyes. Not anger, a warning. "If you are lying, I will know. And when I know, your debt will be the smallest problem you have." He turned and left. The others followed. The SUVs rolled out into the rain and disappeared down the highway. Clara stood behind the counter, gripping the edge with both hands. Her knees felt loose. The diner was quiet again. Too quiet. Then a voice behind her said, "You saved my life." Clara turned so fast she nearly dropped the coffee pot. The man stood in the kitchen doorway. He had one hand pressed to his side. His jacket hung open now, and beneath the white shirt was a bandage already stained red. "Why?" he asked. Clara let out a weak laugh. "I don't know. That is a dangerous answer. So is bleeding in a diner." He studied her. "My name is Mateo. Just Mateo. 4 tonight." She should have demanded more. Instead, she reached under the counter for the first aid kit. "Sit down, just Mateo." He stared at her for a beat. Then he sat. She cleaned what she could. The wound was not deep enough to kill him, but deep enough to hurt. He did not flinch when she touched the bandage. He did flinch when another truck passed outside. Clara noticed. He noticed that she noticed. Neither of them said anything. When he stood to leave, he placed $500 on the counter. Clara pushed it back. "Coffee is $2. Take it." "No. You lied to federal agents for me, and I might regret it by breakfast. Don't make me feel bought too." His expression changed again, softer, almost sad. "You are stubborn. I am broke. There is a difference." He took back the bills, left a 20, and moved toward the door. Before he stepped out, he looked back. "Clara Evans," he said, like her name mattered. "Forget me." that easy. No. A pause. But try, then he vanished into the rain. Clara stood alone with the sound of the neon buzzing outside. She did not sleep. At 6, Pete came in and found her still wiping the counter. You look dead, he said. Nice to see you too. Then she saw it. On the counter near the napkins, half hidden under the sugar caddy, was a gold ring. Heavy, old, a serpent curled into a circle, biting its own tail. Tiny red stones for eyes. Clara picked it up. It felt warm under the diner lights. She should have called Agent Park. She should have put it in an envelope. She should have thrown it into the grease trap and pretended it never existed. Instead, she slipped it into her apron pocket. Some choices do not feel like choices when you make them. They feel like the next breath. At 9:47 that morning, Mrs. Chun dropped her fork in booth 3. Dear God, she whispered. Clara turned toward the windows. Black vehicles were rolling into the lot. Not 500. Not an impossible army, but enough. 40, maybe 50 SUVs, moving in a quiet line that seemed too organized for a town like Mill Creek. They filled the parking spaces. They lined both sides of Highway 41. They blocked nothing officially, but everyone stopped driving anyway. Men in dark suits stepped out. No shouting, no weapons in the air, just presence. Phones appeared in every hand. Across the street, people came out of the gas station, the hardware store, the post office. Someone called the local news. Pete came out of the kitchen with a spatula still in his hand. Clara, he said slowly, what did you do? Before she could answer, the crowd outside parted. Mateo walked through it. Different suit now, charcoal gray, clean shirt, no visible wound, no fear. His face was calm, and that calm made Clara understand something. The man she helped at 2.17 had been real, but he had not been the whole man. This was the other part. The part rooms obeyed. He came inside. Every sound died. Clara reached into her pocket and took out the serpent ring. Her fingers trembled. You forgot something. Mateo's eyes dropped to it, then back to her. You kept it. I didn't know where to send it. No, he said. I suppose you didn't. He slid the ring onto his finger. The red stones caught the light. Then he turned toward the windows, toward the cameras, toward the people of Mill Creek, who had spent years ignoring Clara and now could not look away. His voice was low, but everyone heard it. This diner is under my protection. Clara Evans is under my protection. Anyone who threatens her, follows her, pressures her, or harms what belongs to her, answers to me. The silence outside was absolute. Clara felt cold all over. Protection should have felt safe. This felt like being painted in bright red. Mateo turned back to her. The mask slipped for 1 second. I am sorry. For what? For what comes next? He left the ring on the counter. Keep it for now. Then he walked out. The convoy rolled away within minutes. Highway 41 cleared, but Clara's life did not. Her phone started ringing before the coffee cooled. First, her landlord. He wanted her gone by the end of the week. Too much attention, he said. It's not personal. Then Jenna called, crying and furious. You on the news. They calling you the Mafia waitress. Clara, tell me you did not get involved with Matteo Rossi. Clara looked out at the empty lot. Who is he? Jenna went quiet. You don't know. No. Clara, Jenna whispered. The Rossi family is not a rumor. They are real. And if he said your name in public, every enemy he has heard it too. By noon, customers stopped coming in. By 3, Pete sat across from her in the back booth with his hat in both hands. He could not look at her. I can to keep you on. Honey, Pete, I got grandkids. I got a mortgage. His voice broke. I am sorry. Sorry did not pay rent. Sorry did not stop fear. Clara packed her apron into a paper bag and left through the back door. She walked behind the diner and stood beneath the broken awning, where rainwater dripped in a steady rhythm. Her mother used to smoke there after long shifts, even after the doctor told her not to. Clara could still see Linda leaning against the brick wall, eyes tired, apron stained with coffee, saying, Baby, the world will take plenty from you. Don't hand it your kindness too. Clara had never understood how hard that would be. Now she did. That night, she slept in her Honda behind Walmart, the serpent ring closed in her fist. It did not feel like protection. It felt like a target. Around midnight, a sheriff's cruiser rolled past. Clara sat up, hope rising before she could stop it. The cruiser slowed. The deputy inside looked at her. He knew her. Everyone knew everyone in Mill Creek. He looked at the fogged windows, the trash bag of clothes in the passenger seat, the diner blanket over her knees. Then he looked away and drove on. Clara laughed once. No sound came out. She turned onto her side and pressed the ring to her chest. She did not want Mateo. She did not want Park. She did not want protection from men who carried guns and called it duty. She wanted her mother. She wanted the diner full of normal noise. She wanted one person to knock on the window and say, "Come inside. You matter more than the trouble around you." Nobody came. And somewhere across town, Agent Park watched the news clip again and again, Matteo Rossi raising his voice for one waitress. Park paused the video on Clara's face, scared, confused. Alone, Agent Torres stood behind him. "She is not one of them," she said. Park did not look away from the screen. "Not yet." Torres crossed her arms. "Daniel," he finally turned. "Rossi just made her leverage. Or a victim." Park's jaw tightened. "With Rossi, there is no difference." Torres studied him. "When did civilians become acceptable bait?" Park said nothing. That was the first time he heard the question. It would not be the last. For 3 days, Clara learned the cost of being protected by a dangerous man. Nobody touched her. That was true. Nobody threatened her face to face. Nobody broke into her car or followed her down the street. But nobody stood near her either. At the laundromat, 2 women stopped talking when she came in. At the grocery store, the cashier would not meet her eyes. At a gas station, a man who used to call her sweetheart put her change on the counter instead of placing it in her hand. Small things, cowardly things, things people could deny later. Clara started to understand that exile did not always look like a locked gate. Sometimes it looked like everyone taking one step back. A Sheriff's cruiser slowed beside her Honda in the Walmart lot, then drove away without checking if she was alive. Pete left a box of food behind the diner. No note, no knock, no courage to hand it to her. Kindness, Clara learned, could become cowardly when people were afraid of being seen giving it. She ate cold pancakes from the box and told herself she was not crying because of Pete. She was crying because her mother would have been ashamed of what fear did to a town. The second night in her car was worse than the first. Cold settled into the floorboards. Her back cramped. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard Park saying her mother's dead out loud. Like grief was a weapon he had every right to hold. Around 3, she woke to the sound of tapping. She jerked upright, heart punching her ribs. It was only rain dripping from the Walmart sign onto the hood. Only rain, but her body did not believe in only anymore. She sat awake until sunrise. When the store opened, she washed her face in the bathroom, using cheap paper towels that scratched her skin. In the mirror, she looked older than 27. There were shadows under her eyes and a bruise on her wrist from sleeping with her hand trapped under her body. She stared at herself and whispered, "You are still here." It sounded like a fact she was trying to prove. On the 3rd night, the FBI came for her. She was curled in the back seat beneath an old coat when flashlights hit the windows. "Clara Evans," a voice called. "Open the door." Agent Park stood outside with 2 agents behind him. No sirens. No uniforms except the jackets. Just authority dressed as inevitability. Clara unlocked the door. They did not handcuff her. That made it feel less like an arrest and more like a disappearance. They took her to a mid-range hotel off the highway. Room 214. Beige carpet. A lamp with a crooked shade. Agent Torres waited inside with a folder and tired eyes. On the bed were photographs. Burned warehouses. Men in body bags. A car crushed against a guardrail. A funeral. Clara looked away. Park moved one photo closer. "Look, I don't want to. People rarely do." Clara forced herself to look. "Matteo Rossi," Park said, "head of the Rossi family. Extortion, racketeering, laundering, witness intimidation, suspected in multiple killings. His father built the organization with fear. Matteo made it cleaner, harder to prove, easier to deny." Torres added, "The Moretti family has been at war with them for years. Small war, quiet war, the kind that leaves bodies in alleys and families, pretending they know nothing." Park tapped a photo of a man smiling in a boxing gym. Younger than Matteo, softer face, same dark eyes. Antonio Rossi, Matteo's younger brother, killed last week outside his apartment. "We believe the Morettis did it. Matteo was on his way to identify the body when we tried to pick him up." Clara stared at the photo. The man in it looked kind. Not innocent, maybe, but kind. "Why are you showing me this?" she asked. Park placed a small black device on the table. "A wire, because grief makes men like Matteo reckless. And you are the first reckless thing he has done in years." Clara stepped back. "No, you haven't heard the offer. I don't need to." Park opened another folder. Legal charges, false statements, obstruction, harboring a fugitive, aiding and abetting. The words were dense, but the meaning was simple. Prison, we can arrest you tonight, he said, or you can help us. Clara looked at Torres. You can to do this. Torres looked away. Not much, just enough. Park saw it too. His voice hardened. Rossi put you in this position. Clara laughed once, bitter and scared. You are the one with the wire. Park leaned forward. And he is the one who marked you in front of every camera in town. Do you think that was romance? Protection? No, that was branding. Men like Rossi do not save people. They collect debts. The words hurt because they could be true. Clara hated that. What do you want from me? She asked. He will come back. He has to. If he leaves you exposed after that public display, he looks weak. If he looks weak, the Morettis move harder. His own people start whispering. He will check on you. Park pushed the wire toward her. When he does, you wear this. You ask questions. Not about feelings, names, routes. Moretti retaliation. Vincenzo Duca. Anything operational. Who is Vincenzo? Torres answered before Park could. Matteo S. second. Older. Traditional. Dangerous. He wanted open retaliation after Antonio died. And if I say no, Park's silence answered first. Then he said, you go to county tonight. Your debt stays. Your record follows you forever. Every job application. Every landlord. Every loan. Clara S. eyes burned. You reusing my mother. Park S. face flickered. Just once. Then it closed. I am using the truth. Torres spoke quietly. Daniel. Park ignored her. Clara stared at the wire. She thought of Linda. She thought of Matteo's hands around the coffee cup. She thought of the red stones in the serpent ring. She thought of the word Park had used. Branding. Maybe he was right. Maybe everyone with power took a piece of you and gave it a nicer name. Fine, she whispered. The wire felt cold when Torres taped it beneath Clara S.'s shirt. In the bathroom mirror, Clara looked like herself. That was the worst part. Nothing visible had changed. Only now she belonged to another trap. Park drove her back to Walmart. Before leaving, he leaned down at the window. Do not warn him. Do not remove it. Do not test me. Clara sat alone in the dark, breathing in small pieces. Then her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Are you safe? Clara closed her eyes. Her thumb hovered over the screen. She could ignore him. She could throw the phone into the storm drain. Instead, she typed, I am fine. The response came back almost instantly. You are not. Tomorrow, 2 a.m. The old place. Clara pressed the phone to her chest. Damn you, she whispered. The next night, she used the spare key Pete had not asked back for and let herself into the diner. It was closed. Dark except for the light above the counter. She cleaned because she did not know what else to do. At exactly 2, Matteo entered. No convoy, no visible bodyguard, just him. He sat on the same stool. You lost your job, he said. Clara poured coffee. You noticed. I notice things. Then notice this. I didn't ask you to protect me. I know, I lost my apartment. I know my best friend thinks I'm insane. She may be right. Clara almost laughed. But the wire under her shirt pressed against her ribs and killed the sound. Park was listening somewhere. Maybe in a van. Maybe in another motel room. Maybe sipping bad coffee while waiting for her to sell her soul properly. She forced herself to follow the script. Why were you running that night? Matteo's hand stilled. He looked toward the window. Rain streaked the glass behind him. My brother was killed. Clara knew from Park. But hearing Matteo say it changed the room. Antonio, he said. He was 26. He wanted out. Clara held the coffee pot with both hands. Out of what? Matteo gave her a look. You know what? Say it anyway. A faint sadness crossed his face. My family. The Rossi family. Yes, the crime family. He did not flinch. Yes. Park must have leaned closer to the receiver then. Matteo continued anyway. Antonio coached kids at a boxing gym under a fake last name. He wanted a small house. A woman who did not know what our name meant. Children who would never learn to check mirrors for tails or look under cars before starting them. His jaw tightened. The Morettis shot him outside his building. Not because he was dangerous. Because he was mine. Clara swallowed. And you were going to see his body. I was going to identify what was left of my brother. His voice stayed calm, but his hand tightened around the cup. Park tried to stop me. Old warrants. Pressure. A chance to drag me in while Antonio was lying on a metal table. So you ran. Yes. Clara asked the question before she could stop herself. Have you killed people? The diner seemed to hold its breath. Matteo looked at her. Not offended. Not surprised. Yes, the answer was quiet, honest. It frightened her more than denial would have. Not always with my own hands, he said, sometimes with orders, sometimes with silence. Sometimes by letting men like Vincenzo convince me that fear was cheaper than mercy. Claire felt sick. Then why tell me the truth? 'Cause if I pretend to be good, you will know I am lying. That sentence slipped under her skin. He was not asking for forgiveness. He was not trying to look clean. He was showing her the dirt and letting her decide whether to step back. He came again the next night, and the next. Clara wore the wire because fear still had claws in her. But the talks changed. At first she asked Parks questions. Names, places. Moretti, Vincenzo. Matteo answered around them, sometimes with a sad half-smile, as if he could hear the agents through her ribs. On the second night, she noticed he never sat with his back to the window. He sat beside it, close enough to see outside, far enough not to be framed by the glass. "Do you ever stop checking exits?" she asked. "No. Even when you sleep. Especially then." "That sounds exhausting." He looked at the black coffee between his hands. "It is, then why live like that?" A humorless smile. "Because men who stop looking over their shoulders are usually buried by men who don tea." Clara wanted to say that was no way to live, but she had spent months checking mailboxes for bills and phone screens for collectors. Fear did not need a gun to train you. It only needed repetition. "My mother used to leave the back door unlocked," Clara said, even after I told her it was dangerous. She said any place that serves the lost should have one door that trusts the world. Matteo looked at the kitchen door. "And now I lock it twice." He nodded. "The world teaches." "No," Clara said. "The world hurts. Then we decide what the hurt teaches." He looked at her for a long time. The wire burned against her ribs. She knew Park wanted names, routes, crimes. But this felt more dangerous than any confession. On the third night, she stopped asking about operations and asked about Antonio. Matteo did not answer right away. Then he stood and said, "Come with me." "Where?" "Somewhere real." She should have refused. Instead, she got into his car because the diner suddenly felt full of invisible ears. He drove without a convoy, though she saw a black sedan 2 blocks behind them and knew he was never truly alone. They stopped at a youth boxing gym on the edge of town. The sign was half broken. Inside, the air smelled like sweat, rubber mats, and old dreams. The walls were covered with photos of kids in gloves, grinning beside coaches. Matteo unlocked the door and turned on one row of lights. On the far wall was Antonio's photo, not the funeral photo Park had shown her. This one showed him laughing, with a boy on his shoulders. "He came here twice a week," Matteo said. The owner thought his name was Tony Bell. Clara stepped closer. Under the photo, someone had taped a handwritten note. "Coach Tony told me keeping my hands up matters less than keeping my promises. I miss him." Clara read it twice. Her throat tightened. Matteo stood behind her, silent. "Did you know he did this?" she asked. "Not until after he died." "Why not?" "Because he knew I would ruin it." "Not on purpose." "I would send money, men, security, my name. I would turn one clean thing into another Rossi operation." His voice dropped. "He hid his goodness from me because he thought I would not know what to do with it." Clara turned. For the first time, Matteo looked smaller than his name. "Maybe you can still learn," she said. He laughed softly. "You make that sound easy." "It's not. Then why say it?" "Because hard things can still be true." They stood dinner under the humming lights. No romance, no music, just a grieving brother in a gym full of children's photos, and a woman who had spent months believing good people always lost. Matteo reached into his coat and took out an envelope. He placed it on the front desk. "Rent for the gym," he said. 6 months. Clara watched him. "Do they know it's from you?" "No, why not?" He looked at Antonio's picture. "Because some gifts should not become chains." That was the moment Clara began to understand him. Not excuse him, not trust him fully. Understand him. There is a difference. Before they left, a little boy's boxing glove fell from a bench. Matteo picked it up and held it for a second, too gently for a man who scared rooms. "Antonio used to say kids do not need heroes," he said. "They need adults who do not make their fear bigger." Clara looked at him. "Did you believe him?" "No." A pause. "I want to." On the 4th night, she told him about Linda, about the diner and snowstorms, about her mother giving free soup to a man who later came back sober, employed, and crying with a $100 bill in his hand. Matti listened without interrupting. When she finished, he said, "Your mother understood power better than my father did." Clara frowned. "My mother had no power. She had a door people trusted," he said. "That is power. My father had men with guns. It is not the same thing." Clara had to look away because no one had ever spoken of Linda like that. Not as poor, not as sick, not as a sad story, powerful, in the only way that would have mattered to her. On the 5th night, Clara arrived at the diner and found the broken front window replaced. Pete said a contractor came by and claimed insurance sent him. Insurance denied it. Clara confronted Mateo. He only said, "A boarded window invites trouble. You can to buy your way into decency." "No," he said, "but sometimes you can pay for damage your presence caused." That night, after the diner lights had dimmed and the coffee had gone bitter in the pot, Mateo stayed longer than usual. He sat in the last booth instead of at the counter. Clara slid into the seat across from him because her feet hurt, and because she was too tired to pretend she did not want to. For a while, neither of them spoke. Outside, the road was empty. The neon sign buzzed over the wet glass. "When was the last time someone asked if you were tired?" Clara said. Mateo looked up. The question seemed to confuse him more than any accusation. "I don't know. That long. In my world, tired is something people smell on you." "That sounds lonely." His mouth curved without humor. "It is efficient." Clara wrapped both hands around her mug. "After my mother died, people asked if I needed anything for about 2 weeks. Then they stopped. Not because they were cruel, because grief makes people uncomfortable when it does to leave on schedule." Mateo watched her. "What did you need?" "Someone to say my name like I was still here." He looked down at his coffee. "Clara," he said it quietly. No charm, no performance. Just her name, soft enough to hurt. She blinked fast. "Don T, do that." "Do what?" "Make it harder to remember what you are." He nodded once. "Fair." They sat in silence again. It was the most dangerous silence of all, because it did not feel empty. It felt like a place 2 wounded people could rest without explaining the blood on their sleeves. On the 6th night, Clara saw him outside speaking to a broad-shouldered man with a shaved head. The man was furious. "He stole from us," the man said. Mateo answered, "He has a daughter. He is a thief. Then he will pay back what he stole. He will not disappear. Your father would have. My father is dead." The man went silent. Mateo's voice was low. "And I am tired of building graves to prove a point." Clara looked away before he noticed. But he noticed anyway. He noticed everything. The twist came on the 7th night, when Clara found the envelope under her windshield wiper. It was not from the FBI. It was not from Mateo. There was no name on it. No address. Just a plain white envelope, damp at the edges from the fog. Inside were 3 photographs. The first showed Clara asleep in her car behind Walmart. The second showed Jenna leaving the diner. The third showed the youth boxing gym, where Mateo had taken her. On the back of the last photo, someone had written one sentence in black ink. "Rossi loves broken things. We break them better." Clara's hands went cold. She looked around the lot. Nothing. No car idling. No shadow moving. But she felt watched. For the first time. Moretti was not a name in someone else's mouth. It was here, on paper, in her hands. A warning, with teeth. Clara did not call Mateo first. That surprised her. Instead, she drove to Jenna S' apartment and woke her by throwing pebbles at the bedroom window, like they were teenagers again. Jenna opened the door in a robe, furious until she saw Clara's face. "What happened?" Clara showed her the photos. Jenna went pale. "Who sent these?" "Moretti, I think." "You think?" "I know." Jenna locked the door behind them. "Call the FBI." Clara almost laughed. "They made me bait." "Call Mateo." Clara stared at the photos. That's what they expect. Jenna went quiet. Clara picked up the envelope again. Her fingers touched something stiff inside the flap. A tiny square of black plastic. A tracker, maybe, or a listening device. Clara's stomach turned. Then she did something she had not done before. She made a choice before anyone else could make it for her. "Do you still have Sarah's number?" she asked. Jenna blinked. "My cousin Sarah, the lawyer." "Yes, why?" Clara placed the photos on the table. "Because if everyone wants to use me as evidence, I'm going to start collecting some of my own." Jenna looked at her for a long second. Then she grabbed her phone. That night, Clara and Jenna photographed the envelope, sealed the plastic device in a sandwich bag, and wrote down the exact time and place Clara had found it. Sarah answered half asleep but sharp within seconds once she heard the words FBI, Mafia, and possible tracker. "Do not touch anything else," Sarah said. "Do not give the originals to anyone without a receipt. Not police. Not federal agents. No one." Clara sat at Jenna's kitchen table, staring at the photos. "I am scared." Sarah's voice softened. "Good. Fear means you understand danger. But fear does not mean you surrender your choices. We document. We preserve. We breathe. Then we decide. Clara closed her eyes. For the first time in days. Someone with knowledge was not trying to control her. Someone was teaching her how to stand. Jenna noticed Clara changing before Clara admitted it. She came to the diner the next night after midnight, wearing pajama pants under a coat, eyes red from worry. In her palm was a black listening device she had found taped beneath booth 5. "Tell me this is not what I think it is." Clara went cold. "Jenna, are you working for the FBI?" Clara did not answer. Jenna's face crumpled. "Oh my God. They forced me. And him, did he force you too? Or does he just look wounded enough that you forget what he is?" Clara flinched. "That's not fair, no. What's not fair is watching my best friend get passed from one powerful man to another. Park uses your fear. Matteo uses your sympathy. Moretti uses your face in photographs. And you stand there trying to call it choice. You don't know him. Neither do you." The words landed because they were true. Jenna put the bug on the counter. "Choose your life. Clara, not his. Not theirs. Yours." Then she left. Clara stood alone for a long time. Then she went to the bathroom, lifted her shirt, and ripped the wire from her skin. The tape burned. She did not care. She wrapped the wire in paper towels and hid it in the trash. Then she searched the diner. She found 3 more bugs. One under the register, one behind the napkin dispenser, one beneath the booth where Matteo sat. This time, Clara did not simply panic. This time, she took photos. Close photos. Wide photos. She used a napkin to lift each device and placed 2 of them in clean coffee cups, covered with plastic wrap, the way Sarah had told her. She left one in place under the booth. Let them think they still had an ear. Let them think she was still only bait. Then she drove to Jenna's apartment and placed the cups in a shoebox marked Christmas ornaments. It was the first thing Clara did that no one had ordered, predicted, or permitted. It was small. It was quiet. It would matter later. Across town, Park listened to the dead air from the wire and knew she had removed it. Torres stood by the equipment table. "Pull her out," she said. Park's eyes stayed on the signal monitor. "No, Daniel. Rossi is close. Moretti's scouts have been seen near the gym. Vincenzo is pushing for retaliation. This is the closest we have been. And Clara..." Park did not answer. Torres stepped closer. "When did Clara Evans become acceptable collateral damage?" Park's face tightened. "Luis was collateral damage." Torres softened. Luis Ramirez had been Park's partner, killed in a warehouse blast 3 years earlier, a blast tied to a Rossi shell company, though never proven in court. "I know," Torres said, "but if you use her the way they use people, what exactly are you fighting?" Park looked at her then. For 1 second, he looked tired. Not cold, not righteous, just tired. Then he turned back to the monitor. "I am fighting to win," Torres said quietly. "That is not the same thing." Vincenzo Duca came to the diner the next night, and the first thing Clara noticed was how clean he was. Some men carried violence like dirt under their nails. Vincenzo carried it like cologne. He wore a navy suit, black leather gloves, and a calm smile that never reached his eyes. He entered through the kitchen door without making a sound. Clara was counting the register and pretending she did not jump at every passing car. "We reclosed," she said without looking up. "I know," his voice was smooth, Italian under American polish. Clara turned. She knew him before he said his name. Matteo had mentioned Vincenzo only twice, and both times the air had changed. "Mr. Duca." His smile widened. "So he talks about me. Not much. Smart." He walked to the counter and placed a crushed listening device on the surface. Clara's mouth went dry. "Found this in the trash outside," he said, wrapped in paper towels, hidden under coffee grounds. Very dramatic. Clara backed away. "I was going to tell Matteo." "Were you?" "Yes. Before or after you helped the FBI build a case." The diner seemed to shrink around her. "They forced me." "Everyone is forced," Vincenzo said. "That is what weak people say when they choose betrayal and want forgiveness after." I stopped. "Did you?" He leaned closer. His eyes were pale, almost gray. "Matteo's mistake is that he has started confusing pain with innocence. Antonio dies, and suddenly every sad face looks holy to him. Yours most of all." Clara's hand moved toward her phone. Vincenzo noticed. "Call him," he said. "Please, I would love to hear how you explain this. You think I am guilty because I am scared. No, I think you re-scared because part of you knows I am right." He stepped around the counter. "Do you know why the Morettis killed Antonio? Not because Antonio mattered, because Matteo loved him. In our world, love is a map. It tells your enemies where to strike." "Then why are you here?" Clara asked. "To erase the map." Before Clara could move, the front door opened. Matteo stood there, rein on his shoulders, one hand inside his coat, step away from her. Vincenzo did not turn at first. He smiled. There he is. Matteo's voice stayed quiet. Vincenzo faced him. She wore a wire. I know. Clara stopped breathing. Vincenzo blinked. You knew. Matteo looked at Clara. Not angry. Not surprised. Sad. From the second night. Clara could barely speak. How? Your questions. Your posture. The way shame entered the room before the lie did. Why didn't you say anything? Because fear makes people do things they would never choose freely. Vincenzo laughed. Listen to yourself. She betrays you. And you make it sound like mercy. She had enough to hurt me, Matteo said. She stopped. After giving them what? Not enough. Vincenzo's face hardened. Antonio is dead. Moretti men are moving on our west routes. Your captains are whispering that grief has made you soft. And you are standing here defending a waitress who handed your voice to the FBI. Matteo's jaw tightened. Choose your next words carefully. Your father built an empire with fear, Vincenzo said. You are burning it down for a woman who pours coffee. Matteo took one step forward. Then maybe it was never worth saving. The words hit the room like a shot before any gun appeared. Vincenzo's smile vanished. You do not mean that. I mean every word. Then you are weaker than I feared. Vincenzo's hand slipped inside his jacket. Matteo drew first. Don T, you 1T shoot me, Vincenzo whispered. Not in front of her. For 1 second. Clara saw the entire war inside Matteo's face. Rage, training, grief, choice. Vincenzo drew. Matteo fired. The shot cracked through the diner. Vincenzo staggered back, clutching his shoulder. His gun hit the floor. Clara screamed. Matteo kicked the weapon away. I missed on purpose. Vincenzo looked up, breathing hard. That is why you will lose. Maybe, Matteo said. But not tonight. One of Matteo's men appeared at the back door and helped Vincenzo up. Vincenzo refused at first, then allowed himself to be led out, leaving drops of blood on the tile. When the door closed, Clara and Matteo stood alone in the ruined silence. You knew, Clara said. Yes, this whole time. Yes, and you kept coming back. Matteo nodded. Why? He put the gun away. His hands were steady. His eyes were not. Because trust is a luxury I cannot afford. People fear me, use me, flatter me, betray me, sometimes in the same day. But you had reason to destroy me. Pressure, fear, a clean way out. And still, some part of you stopped. Clara's throat burned. I lied to you. You lied to survive. That does T make it right? No, he said. It makes it human. Human, not bait. Not leverage. Not Mafia waitress. Human. Clara started crying before she could stop herself. Matteo did not touch her at first. He waited. Let her choose. When she stepped forward, he wrapped his arms around her carefully. Like she might disappear if held too tightly. She should have felt safe. Instead, she felt the danger of wanting to be. Then Clara told him about the envelope, the photographs, the Moretti message. For the first time since she had known him, Matteo went completely still, not cold, not calm, still, like every part of him had become a weapon waiting for a target. Where are the photos? He asked. Safe. Where? With someone who knows how to keep evidence. His eyes flicked to hers. Something changed there. Not anger. Respect. Good. You not mad I didn't call you first? Matteo looked toward the windows. No, why? Because you should have people in your life who are not me. That hurt. It healed too. A strange thing. Hearing a dangerous man admit he should not be your only shelter. What happens now? Clara asked. Before Matteo could answer, his phone buzzed. He read the message. His face darkened. Moretti made a move on the gym. Clara's breath stopped. The kids. No one hurt. They painted a warning on the wall. What warning? Matteo looked at her. A serpent can bite its tail. We can cut off its head. Clara understood then. Moretti was not background anymore. They were coming closer. Matteo put the phone away. I have to go. To retaliate. He did not answer quickly enough. Matteo, his jaw flexed. If I do nothing, they come again. If I answer the old way, I become my father. Then find a third way. There may not be one. There is always one, Clara said. It is just usually harder and less satisfying. He looked to phone Sophie then. Really looked. And in that look, she saw why he kept coming back. Not because she made him good. Nobody could do that for another person. But because with her, he remembered that goodness still had a language. The Moretti signs came faster after that. A gray sedan parked across from Walmart for 20 minutes, engine running, then vanished when Clara touched her phone. A man in a wool cap came into the diner near closing, ordered pie he never ate, left a $100 bill under his plate, and under that bill was a matchbook from a restaurant Clara had never visited. Inside the matchbook, someone had drawn a little serpent with its head cut off. At the boxing gym, one of the kids told the owner a nice man had asked questions about Coach Tony, and whether his brother still came around. The owner called Mateo. Mateo did not call Clara. He sent one text: "If anyone you do not know speaks to you, leave." Clara hated how her hands shook when she read it. She hated more that part of her wanted to obey. That night, she drove to Jenna's apartment and sat outside for 10 minutes before knocking. Jenna opened the door, still angry, still afraid, still her friend underneath all of it. Clara did not ask to come in. She only held out the matchbook. Jenna stared at it, then stepped aside. They spread everything across the kitchen table: photos, notes, bugs, receipts, a timeline written on yellow legal paper. Jenna got coffee. Clara could not drink it. "I don't know how to be your friend in this," Jenna said. "I know. I am so scared I say the wrong thing and push you closer to him. I'm scared you'll say the right thing and I still go back," Clara admitted. Jenna's eyes filled. "Then tell me what you need." Clara looked at the evidence on the table. "I need you to remind me I have a life outside danger." Jenna reached for her hand. "You do. You had one before him. You'll have one after him." The word "after" stayed in the room. Neither of them liked it. 2 miles away, Vincenzo sat in the back of a black car while a doctor stitched his shoulder. He refused pain medicine. Pain kept him angry, and anger kept him clear. He made a call from a burner phone. Agent Park answered on the second ring. "I can give you Matteo Rossi," Vincenzo said. Park was silent. Vincenzo smiled into the dark. "But I want full immunity, and I want protection from the Waitress when this is over." "You expect me to believe you?" Park asked. "No, I expect you to hate Matteo enough not to care." Park should have hung up. A better agent would have, maybe even Park before Luis died. But grief can become a room with no windows. Park thought of his partner's funeral, the closed casket, the Rossi shell company that owned the warehouse, the witness who vanished before trial. The years of watching Matteo step around charges like a man walking across stones in a river. "Where?" Park asked. Vincenzo told him. The trap formed in pieces. Park told himself each piece was necessary: a controlled arrest, a criminal informant, a civilian already compromised, a chance to end the Rossi organization before the Morettis turned Illinois into a battlefield. Torres argued in the operations room. Vincenzo does not want justice. He wants Matteo dead. Then we control him. "You think you can control a man who just tried to execute Clara?" Park snapped. "You think I don't know what he is?" Torres stepped closer. "I think you know exactly what he is. And you are using him anyway." Park looked at the files spread over the table. Matteo, Vincenzo, Moretti surveillance, Clara, Luis. All of it blurred into one long wound. If Rossi walks again, more people die. And if Clara dies, Torres asked. Park looked away. That silence was his answer. Clara received Matteo's warning the next night at 11:38. "Do not be at the diner at 3 a.m. It is a trap." She was sitting in her car behind the closed truck stop. Her first instinct was to drive. East, west, anywhere. Become nobody. Nobody was safer. Then she looked across the highway at the diner. Her mother's sign flickered in the dark. Open all night. Linda had believed a diner could be more than a business. A little light for people with nowhere else to go. Clara had spent her whole life being moved by other people's decisions. Doctors, debt collectors, landlords, agents, men with guns, men with names that frightened rooms quiet. She was tired. Not just afraid. Tired of fear deciding for her. She typed, "Where will you be?" Matteo answered, "Somewhere you are not. Leave town." Clara looked at the sign again. "I am staying. Don't to be brave for me," he replied. "Heroes get buried." Clara typed slowly, "I'm not being brave for you. I am choosing for me." Before she went to the diner, she stopped at Jenna's apartment. She gave Jenna the shoebox marked Christmas ornaments. Inside were the FBI bugs, the Moretti envelope, copies of the photographs, the matchbook, and one handwritten note from Clara. "If I get arrested or disappear, give this to Sarah. Not tomorrow. Immediately." Jenna stared at the box. "Clara, please." Jenna's eyes filled. "You are scaring me. I am scared too." "Then, don't to go." Clara touched her friend's hand. "If I run now, they will keep using the next person who is scared enough. I need one thing in my life to be mine." Jenna hugged her hard. Then come back. Clara closed her eyes. I will try at 2:40 a.m. She unlocked the diner and turned on the lights over the counter. She brewed coffee, black. She did not know if anyone would drink it. At 2:50, unmarked vans appeared at both ends of the block. Men in tactical gear moved in the shadows. FBI at 2:55. A single black car pulled into the lot. Mateo stepped out alone. No convoy. No visible weapon. When he saw her through the glass, his face changed. Anger first, then fear. He came inside and locked the door behind him. You should have run. So, should you? I cannot, neither can I. Not anymore. He came close. This is Vincenzo. He made a deal. Park thinks he gets me alive. Vincenzo wants me dead. The Morettis are waiting for whichever side bleeds first. So I am bait. Yes. Again. Mateo closed his eyes. Yes. Will you make masks for me? He looked at her. No mask, no lie. Yes, that one word hurt more than a speech. Before Clara could answer, the kitchen door burst open. Vincenzo walked in with 4 armed men. His shoulder was bandaged tight beneath his coat. His face looked pale and fever-bright. Touching, he said. The king and the waitress, alone at the end of the world. Mateo moved Clara behind him. Let her leave. No, this is between us. It became about her when you chose her over blood. Outside, Park's voice cracked through a megaphone. Mateo Rossi, this is the FBI. Come out with your hands visible. Vincenzo laughed. Even the law came to watch you fall. Mateo did not look away from him. You think Park will protect you. I think Park hates you more than he hates me. That may be the first honest thing you have said. Then another voice came from the kitchen doorway. Calm, amused, unfamiliar. Everyone turned. A man in a tan overcoat stepped in behind Vincenzo's men. He was younger than Vincenzo, maybe early 40s, with sandy blonde hair and a clean, ordinary face. The kind of face people forgot unless they had a reason to fear it. Mateo's expression changed. Adrian Moretti. Clara's stomach dropped. The man smiled. Mateo. Vincenzo went rigid. You were told to wait outside. Adrian Moretti laughed softly. And you were told not to trust the FBI. Yet here we are. Park's megaphone crackled outside again, unaware that the trap had grown another mouth. Adrian looked at Clara. So this is the waitress. Mateo stepped slightly in front of her. Adrian noticed and smiled wider. Antonio would have liked her. He always had a weakness for wounded birds. Mateo's face went white with rage. Do not say his name. Why not? He said yours before he died. The room froze. Clara felt the sentence land inside Mateo like a blade. Adrian continued, almost gently. That is the trouble with brothers. They make such honest sounds at the end. Mateo's hand moved. Clara grabbed his wrist. Not hard, just enough. He looked at her. Her eyes pleaded. Not because Adrian deserved mercy, because Mateo deserved not to be controlled by the cruelest sentence in the room. Outside, Park gave the order. Flashbangs shattered the front windows. White light filled the diner. Smoke rolled over the booths. Someone fired. Then everyone fired. The FBI thought they were controlling an arrest. Vincenzo's men thought they were controlling an execution. Moretti's men, hidden behind the diner, opened fire on both sides, turning the operation into exactly what Adrian wanted. Chaos no one could explain cleanly afterward. Mateo's men, disobeying his order to stay away, came through the back when they heard the first shots. In less than a minute, the diner became noise, smoke, broken glass, and water when a bullet ripped through an old pipe above the kitchen. Clara hit the floor behind the counter. Mateo covered her with his body as bullets tore through the coffee machine. Stay down. I am down. Lower, there is no lower. It was almost funny in the way terror can make the mind strange. A man came through the smoke near the register, gun raised, unable to see clearly. Clara grabbed the baseball bat. Pete kept under the counter and swung at his knee. The man fell. His gun skidded away. Clara stared at it. She did not want it. Then she saw Adrian Moretti step through the smoke, lifting his weapon toward Mateo's back. Vincenzo saw him too. For one strange second, the traitor and the boss wanted the same man alive for different reasons. Vincenzo shouted, "No, he is mine." Adrian turned and shot Vincenzo in the hand. Vincenzo screamed. Mateo spun. Clara grabbed the fallen gun and fired upward. The shot hit the ceiling and burst another pipe. Water poured down. Everyone flinched. Clara did not shoot at Adrian. She shot at the hanging light above him. The fixture exploded, sparks raining down. Adrian stepped back, blinded for half a second. It was enough. Mateo lunged, tackling him into a booth. FBI agents stormed through the front, shouting. Torres saw Adrian and shouted, Moretti is inside. Park's face changed. In that instant, he understood. He had not controlled the trap. He had helped build someone else's. Vincenzo, bleeding and wild-eyed, reached for a fallen agent's sidearm. Park saw him. Matteo saw him. Clara saw him too. Don T, she screamed. Vincenzo swung the gun toward Matteo. One shot, then silence. Matteo fired first. Vincenzo fell backward onto the rain-slick pavement beyond the shattered window. The man who believed mercy was weakness died, because he could not recognize restraint until restraint ran out. Adrian Moretti used the confusion to run. Torres tackled one of his men near the kitchen. Park chased Adrian out the side door. Clara saw only shadows through smoke and rain. Agents surrounded Matteo. He raised his hands. He looked past them to Clara, standing in the broken doorway, soaked from the pipe water, shaking beside a gun she never wanted to touch. Their eyes met. He mouthed 2 words. Don't fear. Then Clara was tackled from behind. Her cheek hit the wet floor. Handcuffs bit into her wrists. Park returned seconds later, empty-handed, face pale with fury. Adrian was gone. Vincenzo was dead. Matteo was in cuffs. Clara was on the floor. The diner sign flickered above them. Open all night blinked once, twice, then went dark. The holding cell smelled like metal, bleach, and old fear. Clara sat on a narrow bench in clothes still damp from the diner. Her wrists were raw from the cuffs. Her ears rang from the gunfire. Nobody told her what time it was. Time in a cell did not move like time outside. It thickened. It sat on your chest. She had asked for a lawyer. The first agent ignored her. The second said someone would come. The third told her to be quiet. By the 7th hour, she stopped asking. When Park entered with Torres, Clara barely lifted her head. Park looked worse than she did. Not physically. His suit was still neat. His badge still straight. But something in his face had cracked open. Rage lived there now, bare and shaking. He threw a folder onto the table in the interview room. Obstruction, aiding and abetting. Assault during a federal operation. Interference with an arrest. Possession of a firearm at a crime scene. You made your life very small. Clara, she stared at the folder. I want a lawyer. You should have wanted one before you chose him. Torres stood by the door, arms crossed. She did not look happy. That scared Clara more than Park's anger. Where is Rossi? Park asked. Clara blinked. What? Where is he? You arrested him. Park leaned forward. The transport never reached lockup. Clara's heart kicked once. Hard. What happened? Ambush, 2 miles from the scene. 4 agents injured. Rossi gone. Matteo had escaped. Relief rose so fast it almost choked her. Park saw it and smiled without warmth. There it is. You still think he cares about you. Clara looked away. I don't know where he is. No, you don't. That is the part that should embarrass you. He opened the folder and spread photos across the table. The diner destroyed. Vincenzo dead. Clara on the ground in cuffs. Matteo being moved toward the van. He used the chaos. Used you. Used your mother's diner. Used my operation. That is what men like him do. They make people feel chosen. And then they leave them holding the consequences. Clara wanted to reject the words. She wanted to say Matteo was different. But she did not know that. Not fully. He was gone. She was here. The truth sat between those facts like a blade. I want a lawyer, she said again. Park slammed his hand on the table. Luis Ramirez wanted to go home to his wife. Clara flinched. Park's voice shook. My partner. He died in a warehouse tied to Rossi money. Burned so badly his wife had to bury a closed casket. You think this is a love story? It is not. It is a machine. Men like Rossi feed people into it. Men like Vincenzo. Men like Moretti. Men like his father. And people like Luis Pay. For the first time, Clara saw the wound under Park's anger. It did not excuse him, but it explained why he had become so sure his pain was permission. Torres stepped forward. Daniel, stop. Park looked at Clara. I used you because he would use you. I pushed first because I knew he would push harder. Clara's voice was quiet. That is what every powerful person says when they hurt someone smaller. Park froze. The words landed. Torres looked at him. No one spoke. Then Park gathered the photos with shaking hands. County transfer in the morning, he said. Arraignment after that. He left. Torres remained for half a second. Her eyes met Clara's. Ask your lawyer about the motel room, she said softly, and the devices planted before consent. Then she followed Park out. Clara was taken back to the cell. She sat on the bench and tried not to think about prison. Tried not to think about her mother's diner. Ruined because Clara had once believed a tired man deserved one cup of coffee before the world swallowed him. Her fingers found in the pocket of the sweatshirt they had given her. After taking her wet uniform, she froze. Something hard, heavy, impossible. She pulled it out slowly. The serpent ring. Gold, red eyes. Mateo's ring. She had the phone searched. More than once. There was no way it should be there. The serpent's mouth had a tiny seam she had never noticed before. Clara pressed it. A hidden hinge opened. Inside, wrapped in a hollow space, was a thin strip of paper. She unfolded it with trembling hands. The handwriting was precise. You did not save me from them. You saved me from myself. Live the life I cannot. Clara read the words until they blurred. Then she hid the ring in her sock before footsteps approached. The door opened. She expected Park. Instead, Jenna stood there with swollen eyes and a visitor badge clipped to her coat. 10 minutes, the guard said. Jenna sat across from Clara in the small visiting room, a scratched plastic barrier between them. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Jenna said, "You look terrible." Clara laughed, a tiny broken sound. "You always know what to say." Jenna pressed her hand to the plastic. "I'm sorry." Clara shook her head. "Dante, no. I need to say it. I was scared. I thought if I yelled loud enough, you would come back. But you were not disappearing because you were stupid. You were trying to stay human while everyone around you treated you like a tool." Clara looked down. "I don't feel human. That's why I came." Jenna leaned closer. "My cousin Sarah is an attorney. Civil rights. Federal misconduct. Entrapment cases. I called her when I saw your arrest." Clara's throat tightened. "I can't pay." Jenna's mouth twitched. "Someone did." Clara went still. "What do you mean?" "A retainer. $20,000. Through a foundation no one can trace cleanly yet. Serpent Foundation." Clara whispered. Jenna watched her carefully. "So you do know." Clara closed her eyes. "He shouldn't have. Maybe not. But Sarah says money does not win this by itself. Evidence does. And apparently someone also sent her a package." "What package?" "Copies of FBI communications. Logs showing Park met Vincenzo off-book. Audio that suggests they had devices in the diner before you agreed to wear the wire." And Clara, "What?" Jenna leaned closer. "The shoebox mattered. Sarah has the bugs you saved. She has the Moretti envelope. She has the photos. She has your note. You helped save yourself before anyone else got the chance." Clara stared at her. Something inside her loosened. Not enough to make the room safe. Enough to let her breathe. "Mateo sent the other files," she asked. "I don't know," Jenna said. "And maybe it is better if you don't." The guard knocked. "Time." Jenna stood, then stopped. "Clara, listen to me. Let Sarah fight the law part. Let me fight the friend part. And you fight for your life. Not his, yours." Clara pressed her hand to the plastic where Jenna's had been. "I am sorry too." "I know," Jenna smiled through tears. "You were always a terrible liar." Sarah Kim arrived the next morning in a navy blazer, carrying a black briefcase and the calmest voice Clara had ever heard. She did not promise miracles. That was the first reason Clara trusted her. "The government will paint you as a willing participant," Sarah said. "We will show coercion, illegal surveillance, improper use of a civilian informant, failure to provide counsel, and, if these documents are authentic, a federal agent knowingly relied on a violent criminal informant with a motive to kill Rossi." Clara sat across from her, hands folded tight. "Will it be enough?" Sarah looked at her. "I do not know yet, but powerful people make mistakes when they confuse fear with consent." That sentence stayed with Clara. Fear is not consent. She thought about the hospital forms her mother had signed. Because nobody explained the cheaper options. She thought about landlords, bosses, agents, mobsters, and all the ways people with power made choices look voluntary. Over the next weeks, Clara learned that justice was not lightning. It was paperwork, motions, hearings, delays, men in suits arguing over whether her terror counted. Park was placed under internal review after Torres testified. She did not turn into a hero overnight. She had followed too much for too long. But in the end, she told the truth. That mattered. It did not erase harm, but it opened a door. Sarah challenged the diner recordings because several devices had been planted. Before Clara agreed to cooperate, she argued the wire was coerced because Park had threatened prisons and used Clara's medical debt as leverage. She showed that hospital debt records had been accessed without proper authorization. She entered Clara's shoebox into evidence through a chain of custody. Sarah built carefully with Jenna's help. The Moretti photos proved Clara had been threatened by a third party before the raid. The hidden devices proved the diner had become a surveillance site before Clara had any real choice. And Clara's handwritten note to Jenna, dated before the arrest, showed something Park did not want the court to see. Clara had not been blindly following Mateo. She had been documenting danger because she knew every side was capable of using her. The first hearing was small. No cameras, no dramatic speech, just fluorescent lights, a judge with reading glasses, and Clara sitting beside Sarah while prosecutors described her like a woman who had chosen chaos for romance. Sarah did not raise her voice. She did not need to. She laid out the timeline, the motel room, the threats, the debt, the devices, the Moretti envelope, Jenna's receipt of the shoebox before the raid, Torres' concerns written in internal notes. Bit by bit, the story the government wanted began to crack. Clara sat there with her hands folded so tightly her knuckles hurt. She did not feel brave. She felt exposed. Swincer showed the photos of Clara asleep in her car. The courtroom shifted. Not much, just enough. A woman on the prosecution side looked down. One of the marshals stopped chewing gum. The judge stared at the image for a long time. "This is your informant?" he asked. The prosecutor hesitated. She was a cooperating witness. Sarah stood. She was a homeless waitress, threatened by both federal agents and organized criminals. That angered the judge more than Clara expected. "Citizens are not pressure points," he said during one hearing, staring directly at Park. "They are people." Clara cried in the bathroom afterward because no one with authority had said anything like that near her in years. Still, freedom did not come quickly. For 6 months, she lived between court dates, cheap motel rooms, and Jenna's couch. The diner stayed boarded up. Pete visited once, hat in hand, and cried harder than Clara did. "I should have stood by you," he said. Clara wanted to be angry. Some days she was. But healing did not always feel like forgiveness. Sometimes it felt like admitting someone failed you and deciding not to carry that failure forever. She told him. "You were scared," he said. "That does to make it right." She nodded. "No, but it makes it human." She heard Mateo's voice when she said it. That hurt. She did not hear from him. No calls, no messages, no sightings. The news called him a fugitive. The bureau called him dangerous. The streets whispered he had gone north, or south, or overseas, or underground so deep even his own people did not know where he slept. Adrian Moretti disappeared after the diner raid, for 2 weeks. Rumors said he had won. Then his warehouses began getting raided by state police, not federal. Then 3 of his accountants flipped. Then the youth boxing gym received an anonymous donation, large enough to buy the building outright. Nobody knew who sent the documents that hurt Moretti. Nobody knew who scared his men into leaving Mill Creek alone. Rumor said Mateo was gone but not blind. Rumor said the Rossi family had changed leadership quietly. Rumor said a war had been delayed, not ended. Clara stopped listening. She tried to build normal days. That was harder than surviving danger. Danger gave you instructions. Run, hide, duck, stay quiet. Normal life asked bigger things. Eat breakfast, sleep before dawn, answer Jenna's texts, walk into a grocery store without hearing the echo of flashbangs. Clara got a temporary job at a truck stop 30 miles away, pouring coffee for people who did not know her story. The first week, every black SUV made her drop something. A spoon, a receipt, a cup. The manager, a woman named Rhonda with silver hair and no patience for gossip, noticed. "You got ghosts?" Rhonda asked one morning. Clara froze. Rhonda only refilled the napkin holder. "I got some too. Just don't let them run the register." It was the closest thing to therapy Clara could afford for a while. Later, Sarah connected her with a counselor who worked with victims of coercion and trauma. Clara almost refused. Then she heard her mother's voice in her head. "Baby, help is not a debt unless someone makes it one." So she went. She sat in a small office with plants by the window and talked about the diner, Park, Mateo, Jenna, Linda, the gun in her hands, the sound of glass breaking. Some sessions, she cried. Some sessions, she said almost nothing. Healing was not a straight road. It was a room you returned to, until your own memories stopped attacking you from the corners. Jenna came to 3 sessions, not because Clara asked, but because the counselor suggested trauma did not stay neatly inside one person. Jenna cried too. She admitted she had been angry because fear made anger feel useful. She admitted she had searched online for Mateo Rossi until she made herself sick. She admitted that for one night after leaving Clara in the diner, she had almost convinced herself Clara deserved the consequences of her choices. "I hated myself for that," Jenna whispered. Clara took her hand. I thought the same thing, about me. They learned slowly that friendship after amber damage was not the same as friendship before. It had to be rebuilt with apologies, boundaries, and small proofs. Jenna stopped saying, I told you so. Clara stopped hiding things because she wanted to avoid hurting Jenna. When Sarah needed documents, Jenna drove them. When Clara woke from nightmares and could not breathe, Jenna sat on the kitchen floor with her and counted breaths until morning. She wore the serpent ring on a chain under her shirt for a while. Then she put it in a drawer. Then she took it out again. Some nights she hated it. Some nights she held it like a prayer. She did not know whether Mateo saved her because he cared, because he owed her, or because protecting her allowed him to believe he was still capable of mercy. Maybe all three were true. People were rarely one thing. That was one of the painful lessons. Park had been wrong to use her, but his grief was real. Mateo had protected her, but his world had harmed people. Clara had lied for a stranger, lied to that stranger, risked herself for him. And none of those choices fit neatly into good or bad. Life did not become clean just because a judge wore a robe. In the weeks after the dismissal, Clara discovered that innocence did not erase fingerprints from the soul. People in Mill Creek started speaking to her again, but many did it badly. Some apologized too loudly in grocery aisles, as if volume could cover cowardice. Some acted as if nothing had happened, which hurt in a quieter way. Mrs. Chun brought soup to Jenna's apartment and cried on the sofa, saying she should have come sooner. Clara thanked her, because the soup's warm, and because shame was still a human thing, but she did not pretend the delay had not mattered. Pete asked if she wanted him to testify against the landlord, who pushed her out. Sarah said the case would be hard, and probably not worth the pain. Clara thought about it for 2 days, then decided not every wrong needed to become another fight. Sometimes walking away with your name still intact was victory enough. Agent Torres sent a letter through Sarah. It was short, no excuses. Only a statement that Clara had been wronged, and that Torres had waited too long to challenge it. Clara read the letter 3 times. Then she put it in the same drawer as the hospital bills. Not forgiven, not forgotten, but no longer allowed to sit on the table where she ate. Park resigned before the internal report became public. The news called it retirement. Sarah called it strategy. Clara called it another powerful man, leaving through a door of his own choosing. A month later, a small article said Daniel Park would not face criminal charges, but several of his cases were under review. Jenna slammed the newspaper on the kitchen table and cursed so loudly the neighbor knocked on the wall. Clara surprised herself by not crying. She was tired of believing punishment was the only proof that harm had been real. Sarah told her that systems rarely apologize in ways victims deserve. Clara hated that answer because it was true. Still, the judge's words stayed with her. Citizens are not pressure points. They are people. She wrote the sentence on a sticky note and placed it beside Jenna's coffee maker. Every morning, while the cheap machine coughed and sputtered, Clara read it, not because the court had saved her, because the words reminded her that dignity did not begin when authority recognized it. It had been hers before Park threatened her, before Mateo marked her, before Moretti photographed her, before the town looked away. The work now was not becoming worthy again. The work was believing she had never stopped being worthy. Some nights she failed. Some nights she woke on Jenna's couch with her hands over her ears, certain she could hear glass breaking. Jenna learned not to grab her. She would sit on the floor a few feet away and say, "You in my living room. It's Tuesday. The kettle is on. You are safe enough for this minute." Safe enough became a phrase they used when safe felt too big to believe. Clara used it at the truck stop when a man in a dark suit walked in and ordered coffee. She used it when a black SUV turned at an intersection behind her. She used it when a debt collector called about a bill that should have been closed and her whole body wanted to fold. Safe enough for this minute, then the next minute, then the next. The counselor said healing often came in units too small to impress anyone. Clara liked that. She was tired of dramatic transformations. She wanted small. She wanted boring. She wanted to buy oranges, compare prices, and sleep 6 hours without dreaming of red stones in a serpent's eyes. Sarah also taught her about consent in a way no one had before. Not romantic consent only, legal consent, medical consent, financial consent. The kind of consent that could be crushed under fear, debt, authority, hunger, loyalty, or grief. Clara listened, angry and fascinated. "So when I said yes to the wire," she asked, "it was not really yes." Sarah folded her hands. It was a response to a threat. Courts argue about words. People know the difference in their bones. Clara thought about how many people lived entire lives saying yes, because no had been made too expensive. Her mother signing payment plans. Pete firing her because fear threatened his grandchildren. Torres staying silent because disobedience could end a career. Even Mateo, born into a name that made violence feel like inheritance. Understanding did not erase responsibility, but it made Clara less eager to divide the world into monsters and saints. That mattered when she thought of Mateo. It mattered too much. One night, she drove alone to the boxing gym. She parked across the street and watched children spill out into the cold, laughing, pushing one another, their gloves dangling from their backpacks. The new owner had painted over the Moretti warning. The wall was bright blue now. Above the door, a small plaque read Antonio Bell Youth Boxing Fund. No Rossi, no serpent. Just the fake name Antonio had chosen for the part of himself that wanted to be free. Clara sat in the car until the lights went out. Then she whispered, "I hope you got out." Too, she did not know if she meant Antonio, Mateo, or herself. Maybe all three. On a Tuesday afternoon in October, the charges were dismissed. Not reduced. Dismissed. Sarah S.'s face barely changed when the judge ruled, but Jenna gasped like joy had punched her. Clara stood very still. Free. The word should have lifted her. Instead, it made her knees weak. Outside the courthouse, reporters shouted questions. "Did Mateo Rossi contact you? Were you in love with him? Do you regret lying to the FBI?" Sarah touched her elbow, warning her not to speak. Clara stopped anyway. She looked at the cameras. She thought of her mother serving coffee to strangers at midnight. She thought of Park saying, "Smart women did not ruin their lives for strangers." She thought of Mateo bleeding into a diner napkin and trying not to shake. "I regret many things," Clara said. Her voice was soft, so the reporters went quiet to hear it. "But I do not regret seeing a person before I saw a label. That does not mean every choice after was right. It means the world gets darker when we stop recognizing each other as human." A reporter shouted, "Do you think Mateo Rossi is a good man?" Clara paused. "I think people are more dangerous when we pretend they are only one thing." Sarah led her away. The clip went everywhere. Some people mocked her. Some called her naive. Some wrote messages saying her words helped them forgive themselves for choices made under fear. Clara did not read most of them. Healing required distance too. Freedom, she learned, was not the same as peace. 3 weeks before Christmas, Clara drove back to Highway 41 because a lawyer called about the sale of the diner. She almost did not answer. The building had been listed months earlier, after insurance money failed to cover repairs and back taxes. Clara could not afford to reopen it. She could barely afford the new tires on her old Honda. Losing the diner felt like losing her mother a second time. But holding on to a place you cannot save can become another kind of drowning. The lawyer said the buyers wanted to meet her. "Why?" Clara asked. "They were insistent," he said. "And there is something on the property they were told belongs to you." She drove there on a Saturday morning. The sky was pale. Frost silvered the grass beside the highway. When the diner came into view, Clara had to pull over. The plywood was gone. The windows were repaired. The walls had fresh paint. The sign had been rewired. Clara S. Diner glowed red and blue even in daylight. A young couple stood in the parking lot, bundled in coats, nervous and smiling. Their names were Mark and Elena. They had 2 children, 1 food truck, and a dream bigger than their bank account. Elena hurried forward and took Clara's hands. "We wanted to thank you." Clara blinked. "For what?" "For choosing us." Mark frowned when he saw Clara's confusion. "The trust said you wanted the diner to go to a local family, not a chain, not a developer." Clara felt the air change. What trust? Mark checked his phone. The Serpent Foundation. Of course. The name should have made her angry. Maybe it did somewhere underneath. But mostly she felt tired. Not because Mateo had helped. Because even his kindness arrived like a secret she had to decide whether to carry. "There's something inside," Elena said gently. Clara walked in alone. The diner smelled like fresh paint, sawdust, and coffee. New booths, new floor, patched walls. But the bones were the same. The counter where Mateo had sat. The booth where Jenna found the bug. The spot by the register where Clara had first picked up the serpent ring. On the counter sat a commercial espresso machine, beautiful and absurdly expensive. Taped to it was an envelope with her name. Clara opened it. The handwriting was Mateo S. "You chose your mother S. light over my darkness. That is why you will always be better than people like us. The machine is not payment. It is an apology to the place I helped destroy. Do not lie for anyone again, not even me. But if you ever make coffee here one last time, you know how I take it. Black." Clara pressed the paper against the counter and bowed her head. she cried quietly. Not like she had cried in the car. Not like she had cried in the cell. This was different. Grief leaving through a door it had used too often. Elena came in after a few minutes, carrying 2 cups. "We tried the machine," she said softly. "Thought you should have the first one." Clara took the cup. Black coffee, no sugar. Too hot, perfect. She sat at the counter and drank while Mark adjusted a crooked menu board, and Elena wiped imaginary dust from clean shelves. Life returning to a place where fear had once taken over. That mattered. Not because Mateo paid for repairs. Not because Clara's pain had a pretty ending. It mattered because places could be wounded and still become shelter again. People too, maybe, before the reopening. Elena asked Clara to walk through the kitchen and tell them what belonged where. Clara almost refused. She had no ownership now, and part of her feared that stepping behind the counter would make the loss fresh again. But Elena handed her an apron. Not Linda's old apron. Not some sentimental trap. Just a clean white apron with no name on it. "We want to learn the place from someone who loved it," she said, so Clara went in. She showed them which burner ran hot, which shelf bowed in the middle, where Linda used to hide emergency chocolate for waitresses having bad nights. Mark listened like the details were sacred. Elena wrote everything down. They did not treat Clara like a tragic local legend. They treated her like a person with useful knowledge. That kindness was almost harder to bear. Clara opened the pantry door and found a pencil mark on the frame. Clara AG 9, Linda AG 39, written in her mother's looping hand because Linda had insisted on measuring herself too, saying grown women were allowed to keep growing in ways rulers could not see. Clara touched the mark and laughed through tears. Elena stepped back without speaking. Respect, Clara realized, sometimes meant giving someone privacy without leaving them alone. They spent the afternoon testing recipes. Mark burned the first batch of pancakes. Elena oversalted the soup. Clara showed them how Linda had made pie crust by feel, not measurement, pressing the dough until it gave back just enough. For 1 hour. Memory did not feel like a knife. It felt like flour on her hands. When the first apple pie came out golden, Clara cut 3 uneven slices and they ate standing up beside the stove. Mark said it tasted like a place he wanted his children to grow up in. Clara had to put her fork down. That was when she understood that selling the diner was not burying Linda. It was letting Linda's light move through other hands. Later, Jenna arrived early and found Clara labeling jars in the kitchen. For a second, Jenna looked like she might cry. Instead, she picked up a marker and asked, "How bossy are we being about Cinnamon?" "Very," Clara said. Mom believed Cinnamon deserved leadership. Jenna nodded solemnly. "Then Cinnamon shall lead." They laughed until Elena came in and demanded to know whether all old diners were this strange. Clara said yes, especially the good ones. The laughter did not erase anything. The bullet scars were still under fresh paint. The corner of one booth had been replaced because no amount of sanding could remove the damage. The new front window caught the sunset differently from the old one. But Clara was learning that repair did not mean pretending the break had never happened. Repair meant deciding the break would not have the final word. On the afternoon before the reopening, Sarah came by with a folder. Clara stiffened at the sight of legal paper. Sarah saw it and raised one hand. Nothing bad, just final documents. The foundation covered the remaining lien on the building before the sale. The buyers own it clean. Clara frowned. That much money should have made her feel grateful or angry. Instead, it made her cautious. "Does it come with strings?" Sarah smiled faintly. "I looked for them. If there are any, they are hidden better than I can find. The documents say no control, no repayment, no contact requirement." Clara looked across the diner at the shadow box, waiting empty behind the counter. "He is still choosing for me," she said. Sarah sat beside her. "Maybe, or maybe he is cleaning up damage he caused. Both can be true. What matters is what you do next." Clara nodded slowly. She was starting to understand that freedom was not the absence of influence. Everyone had been shaped by someone. Linda by poverty and generosity, Park by grief and obsession, Mateo by blood and inheritance, Clara by fear, kindness, debt, and a single lie at 2:17 in the morning. Freedom was not becoming untouched. It was choosing what would guide you after the touch. That evening, before guests arrived, Clara stood alone in the bathroom, where she had once taped a wire under her shirt. The mirror had been replaced. In the new one, she looked tired but present. She touched the scar where the tape had torn her skin. Faint now. Almost gone. "I am not evidence," she whispered. "I am not bait. I am not debt. I am not his weakness. I am not their mistake." She waited until she believed at least one of the sentences. Then she went back out. Outside, the highway hummed. Clara finished the coffee and reached into her coat pocket. She had brought the ring. She had not known why. Now she did. Behind the counter, Mark had hung a small shadow box for old diner photographs. Linda Evans smiling in 1998. Clara at 12 beneath the neon sign. Pete flipping pancakes at a town fundraiser. Clara opened the box and placed the serpent ring in the corner, beside a faded matchbook that said open all night. Elena watched. What is it? Clara closed the glass. A reminder. Of what? Clara looked around the diner. At the repaired windows. At the warm lights. At the door where a desperate man had walked in and changed her life. That being protected is not the same as being free, she said. And that sometimes the people who help us are not the people we can follow. Elena did not pretend to understand everything. She only nodded. Respect, Clara had learned, often began there. Not with answers. With room. The diner reopened that evening for friends and family. Clara almost left before sunset, but Elena insisted she stay for the lighting of the sign. Jenna arrived with Sarah, both carrying flowers. Pete came too, older somehow, holding a pie he had baked himself. Clara hugged him. Not because everything was fixed, because not everything needed to be fixed to move forward. At 7:00 p.m., Elena turned on the neon. Clara's diner, open all night, glowed against the winter dark. A few people clapped. Clara smiled through tears. Then she heard engines. Low, steady, familiar. Everyone turned toward the highway. A line of black SUVs moved past in quiet formation. Not 50. Not a threat. Maybe 12. Enough to be seen. Not enough to stop traffic. They did not turn, and they did not slow. They only passed beneath the glow of the sign, one after another, like shadows acknowledging a light they could not enter. In the last SUV, the rear window lowered halfway. Clara saw only a silhouette. Broad shoulders. Dark hair. A hand raised. Not in command. In farewell. Then the window rose, and the convoy continued toward Chicago until the taillights vanished. Nobody spoke for a while. Jenna slipped her hand into Clara's. Are you okay? Clara watched the empty road. The ache was there. It might always be there in some form, but it no longer owned the whole room inside her. I think so. Later, after the small crowd left, Clara stood alone by the shadow box. The ring looked smaller behind glass, less like a chain, more like history. She thought about Matteo living somewhere beyond maps and headlines, still dangerous, still hunted, still carrying sins she could not wash away for him. She hoped he remembered Antonio without turning grief into revenge. She hoped he drank his coffee somewhere quiet. She hoped he kept choosing not to become his father, even when no one was there to praise him for it. But she did not hope he would come back for her. That was new. That was freedom. Clara walked outside. The air was cold enough to sting. The neon sign buzzed above her, steady now, repaired but not perfect. A beacon for truckers, runaways, night shift nurses, grieving daughters, men with secrets, anyone who needed warmth and did not know how to ask. Her mother had believed a diner could be more than a business. It could be a small mercy, a place where respect came in simple forms. A clean cup, a hot plate, a name remembered. A stranger treated like a person before the world turned them into a case file, a debt number, a headline, a criminal, a witness, a target, or a warning. Clara understood that better now. Compassion had cost her. It had nearly destroyed her. But the lesson was not to stop caring. The lesson was to care with open eyes, to see people as human without surrendering your own life to their darkness, to help without disappearing. To forgive without pretending harm did not happen. To respect another person without forgetting to respect yourself. She hugged Jenna goodbye, thanked Sarah again, and promised Elena she would visit. Then she got into her car. For once, she did not check the rearview mirror in fear. She looked only to see the sign one last time. Clara's diner shone behind her. Open all night. She started the engine and pulled onto Highway 41. Not toward the past. Not toward Matteo. Not away from fear exactly. But toward a life she would choose 1 mile at a time. She did not know where she would live next. That uncertainty frightened her less than it once had. Jenna had offered the couch as long as she needed it. Sarah had mentioned a small apartment opening above her friend. Bookstore. Rhonda at the truck stop said Clara could keep the morning shift if she wanted it. None of those things sounded like destiny. That was why they felt safe. They were options, not commands. Clara drove past the Walmart lot where she had slept and slowed for 1 second. Another car sat near the back. Windows fogged, a blanket pressed against the glass. Clara pulled into a space 2 rows away. She did not approach. She remembered how frightening kindness could feel when it came too close too fast. Instead, she walked into the store, bought 2 bottles of water, a bag of oranges, a toothbrush, and a $20 gift card. She placed them in a plastic bag, wrote "Take what helps" on the receipt, and left the bag on the hood of the car. Then she drove away before anyone could see her. Her mother would have done more. Her mother would have knocked, learned a name, and probably brought the person home. Clara was not ready for that, but she was ready for a small mercy with no chain attached. On the highway again, she thought about the first lie. For months, people had asked whether she would change it if she could. The honest answer was never simple. If she had told the truth, the diner might still be hers. Pete might never have fired her. Jenna might never have cried behind jail glass. Park might never have turned her into a tool. Mateo might have gone to prison before he could drag her into his world. Or maybe the Morettas would have killed him that night. Maybe Vincenzo would have started a war. Maybe Antonio's gym would have been burned. Maybe another waitress, another clerk, another nobody in another town would have become the bait. Regret did not work like math. It did not let you subtract pain until the right answer appeared. Clara had stopped asking whether the lie had been right. She asked a harder question now. What kind of person would she become because she had told it? Not a martyr, not a savior, not a woman waiting for a man in a black car. She wanted to become someone who understood that compassion needed boundaries the way houses needed walls. Walls did not mean you hated the world. Walls meant you wanted the people inside to survive the weather. She passed the gas station, the post office, the hardware store, all the ordinary buildings that had once watched her become famous for the worst night of her life. The town looked smaller now, not harmless, not cruel beyond redemption, just small, full of people who had failed her, helped her, feared her, judged her, fed her, and clapped when the sign came back on. Maybe that was community too. Not purity, not constant courage, a messy agreement to keep learning how not to abandon each other. Clara was not sure Mill Creek deserved that generous a description, but she hoped Mark and Elena's children would inherit a better version of it. She hoped one day a tired girl behind a counter would not have to choose between law and mercy, with a gun pointed at both. The road opened beyond town, for the first time. Clara did not feel that leaving meant losing. Miles later, she stopped at a closed overlook where the fields spread dark and flat under a low winter sky. She got out and stood beside the car, letting the cold bite through her coat. Silence had changed. During the worst months, silence felt like waiting for harm. Now it felt like space. Clara took out a small notebook Sarah had given her after the final hearing. On the first page, Sarah had written, "Write what belongs to you." Clara had not used it until now. She leaned against the hood and wrote 5 things. My name, my mother's stories, my right to say no, my right to help without disappearing, my future. The list looked too small for everything it had cost, but it was enough to begin. She tore out no pages. She made no vow dramatic enough to impress a camera. She simply put the notebook in the glove compartment, where old insurance forms and napkins used to gather, and decided she would keep adding to it. Tomorrow she would call about the apartment above the bookstore. Next week she would ask Rhonda for more morning shifts. One day, when the thought did not scare her, she might volunteer at Antonio's gym, not because of Mateo, but because children deserved adults who did not make fear bigger. Maybe she would teach them how to make pancakes after practice. Maybe she would tell them about Linda. Maybe she would never tell them about the night a Mafia boss drank black coffee in her diner. Both choices were allowed. That freedom felt quiet, almost plain, and therefore real. She climbed back into the car and turned on the heater. It coughed twice, then warmed. Clara smiled at that stubborn little sound. Before pulling away, she looked once at the road behind her. No convoy, no federal sedan, no gray Moretti car, only darkness, road paint, and the faint glow of Mill Creek in the distance. For months, Clara had believed peace would arrive like rescue, sudden and unmistakable. Now she understood it came more like dawn through dirty windows, slowly, unevenly. You had to notice it before it fully believed in itself. She whispered goodnight to her mother, to the diner, to the scared woman she had been in the holding cell, and even to the man who had taught her that danger and tenderness could live in the same body. Then she placed both hands on the wheel. Her hands were still shaking a little. That was all right. Courage, she had learned, was not a steady hand. It was movement with a shaking one. She checked the mirror, not because she was afraid, but because safe driving mattered. Linda would have laughed at that. Then Clara turned back toward the open lane, signaled, and pulled onto the highway like an ordinary woman, going somewhere of her own choosing. The night did not become gentle. It simply stopped feeling like an enemy. That was enough for now. Enough for the next mile. Enough for the breath after that. Enough to keep going without asking anyone for permission. She chose forward anyway. A mile later, her phone buzzed. No caller ID. For a second, her heart stopped. She pulled over beneath a streetlight and looked at the message. 4 words. Live well. Clara Evans. No initial. No promise. No threat. She stared at it until the screen dimmed. Then she deleted it. Not because it meant nothing, because it meant enough. Some goodbyes are not doors slamming. Some are lights left on behind you, so you can finally stop looking back. Clara placed both hands on the wheel, breathed in, and drove into the dark, where the road was open. The night was wide, and for the first time in years, she was not running. She was going.